Hello and welcome back to my channel if this is your first time here. Hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today we're doing another try a chapter tag because I've been struggling in what order I should read the SPFBO finalists. So I figured why not read the first chapters of all of them, give myself a ranking, and read based on that ranking. Like why, that just seemed genius to me. So today we're going through and we are reading all 10 of the finalists. They're tucked nicely into this little cubby, so I don't want to take them out until it's like time to read them. Otherwise I would normally hold them up for you, but I have 10 chapters to try today, so we better get on it, and that's why I'm in my cozy little reading nook corner with some flashing twinkling lights. They don't actually twinkle, but my camera picks up their frames per second way too fast. I even slowed down the frames per second that I normally film in to film this video, and they are still twinkling. So we're just dealing with it. I'm sorry if the twinkling is distracting. I have no idea which one I'm going to read first, so I'm just going to pick one up, I'm going to read it, and I'm going to get back to you, and I will be using the rubric to rate all of the first chapters, which is kind of fun. So you will get to see that as well in this video. So I ended up starting with Tethered Spirits, and if I'm being honest, I wasn't entirely sold with that chapter, which is really disappointing because this is one of the higher up predictions for me. And I think the book still has potential, but that first chapter just was not strong. I know nothing about the magic system. I know very little about the world building in general. I feel like I didn't even scratch the surface on our character. I felt like this was a very surface level scene. We were seeing the characters do something, but I do want that emotional impact of a character. I didn't get those strong emotions. However, I am intrigued to read on, and I do want to see this one person that they're talking about trying to find. I want to see that. I did like the setup of like the poor country and the little kids that you give money to get to do things because they need the money, and there obviously was also a little bit of a mystery setup in this. Not the strongest first chapter. My gut reaction is a 3-star prediction here. Let's look at the spreadsheet and figure that out though to see what exactly I'm sitting at. So I have my laptop in front of me and we're just going to quickly do the spreadsheet for you. So this isn't exactly the SPFBO spreadsheet. This is actually the rough draft of the spreadsheet I'm working on giving everyone next year, which is based on the SPFBO spreadsheet. The only difference in this one is that in the SPFBO spreadsheet, it's not weighted at all, and in this one it is weighted, but the SPFBO spreadsheet doesn't have the correlation to the star ratings. So simply put, I just wanted to use this one because it's very similar, and you'll be able to see the star rating then as well as the score out of 10. So based on the first chapter, the first thing we go over is characters. So I have a little rubric. Do their motives make sense for them? Do they act their age? Do you feel for them, or are they compelling to read about? I don't know the age of our characters based on that first chapter. Reminder that this is first chapter, so these could really change as I read. The predictions here could be completely wrong for the predictions later on, but it's just kind of based on that first chapter. Do you feel for them? Are they compelling to read about? Are they distinguishable from each other and have their own voices? I only met one character, so I can't really answer to that, so I'm just gonna not think about that. Do you understand them? Are they nuanced characters versus flat characters? How are the side characters, not just the protagonists? Could you describe the characters to a friend? Based on the first chapter, I'm really going to look at that, like, motives and are they nuanced characters versus flat characters? Because I think those are things that a first chapter should do. They should set up, like, a feeling about them, if they're compelling or not. I don't need to have distinguished them. I don't need necessarily to know about the side characters. I don't need to have described a character. It doesn't need to be as in-depth. But based on the things that I think do matter, I think this would get a 6 from me. It's okay. More good than bad, because I just kind of struggled a little bit with that first character. So we're going to put a 6 in there. We're going to move on over to plot. Obviously, we haven't really set up the plot yet, so these questions don't really work well for plot. I'm mostly going to go on intrigue, on whether I'm intrigued by the plot, and I will say I am. I think I'm going to do maybe a 6.5. I am intrigued, but it could have done a better job of letting me know what the plot is, if that makes sense. I think writing style is the easiest thing to critique in the first chapter predictions. So I think for this one, I think it's a 7. There were a lot of great things, but I still saw some issues. I didn't mind the writing style. I didn't think the dialogue was super clunky, but it could have been fixed up a little bit. My biggest issue with the writing style was the use of he's and she's. There was a lot of he's. Like, there was a paragraph that had like 5 he's in them, and I think it's just on the author to kind of come up with other words other than he, maybe switch in some names, maybe just imply, like, if we're already talking about the same character, you don't necessarily need to say, like, Jared stood up, he went to the farm. You could have just said Jared stood up and went to the farm, or he stood up, he went to the farm, he stood up and went to the farm. Like, you can get rid of some of those he's. So I think that is a 7 for me. The setting, I don't really know much about the setting, so I think it's a 6 as well. Like, I wasn't intrigued about it enough. Enjoyment, I think, is also a 6, which then puts it at a 6.30, which is a 3-star rating. So, honestly, my gut reaction was pretty on par with this. I do think it felt like a 3-star. Nothing terrible about it, but nothing amazing about it, but I'm very excited to continue reading and be intrigued. I think, as always, that was only one POV that we read from, so I could like other POVs more. There's often one POV that is a little bit less likable for me than others, specifically in 3 POV'd stories, so I'm still really excited for this, and yeah, a 3-star is not a bad star rating from me either, considering I do give out 2s and 1s, but that's our first one done. I feel like I literally just talked to you because this is only a 2-page chapter, so it took me so fast to read, and I am shook because I really enjoyed that chapter. This was one that I'm very terrified of. I'm literally so terrified of it. So much of this screams that I probably won't like it, but there are some like things that I think I would enjoy, and I could keep reading. I was entertained. I was intrigued. Entertained's probably not the right word. I was very intrigued. I think they set the atmosphere up quite well. The writing is very lyrical. I don't typically like lyrical writing, but it has worked for me on occasion. Like A Dowry of Blood, I really, really enjoy because the writing is just so beautiful. It was a very beautiful book, and I feel like this could be it. I couldn't really figure out ever why it was called A Song for the Void, but the first couple pages use music quite literally as a metaphor, and it was beautiful. I actually think this was very beautiful, and the way it was written felt very isolating and gave me the chill that I want from horror, and this is cosmic horror. Let's rate it using the spreadsheet. So if I'm looking at characters, this book is told in one perspective, and the first chapter is the person that's writing the book and telling you the story, telling you that they're talking about it. It gives you a feeling of emotional loneliness. I actually really enjoyed the setup for this character. I think it's getting a 7.5 from me. Plot. There was not a lot of plot setup in this. It kept me intrigued because it talks about the vastness of the ocean, and one line particularly, it's literally the second page, guys, it's not a spoiler, says, "I'm not sure what I saw on the nameless island we leave behind us, lost and mysterious in the South China Sea. I'm still not sure if it's even me who sits and tells this tale, but this tale is all I have for you." That left me super intrigued for the rest of the novel, so I would count that as just like a little bit of that plot intrigue. So I think that's also getting a 7.5 from me. The writing, I think, was beautiful. It's getting a 9 from me. I actually really enjoyed the writing, and the setting is also getting a 9 from me. The world building, I felt like I understood the vastness of the ocean and the loneliness that it can bring. It just felt very vast to me in terms of setup. And the enjoyment, I think, is also getting a 9 for me. I really, really liked that. Based on that, we have an 8.40, which is a 4-star prediction for this. This is surprising. This is so surprising. On to the next one. I picked up Small Miracles, Bad Angels, Good Intentions next. Now, this one I was hopeful for because Rachel predicted it to be her last, and so far, out of the SPFBO finalists she's read, she really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised and pleasantly shocked by how much I enjoyed this first chapter. Like, I really enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. It's going to be, I think, a really easy book to read. It reads really fast. It's going to be fun. It's going to be just a good time. And it does have a lot of like insightful thoughts and feelings in it in retrospect to good and evil, which is something I adore in books. So, I'm excited for this one. I'm pretty sure this is on the bottom of my actual like prediction list just based on vibes. And I have bigger hopes for this now after that first chapter. I don't want to say too much because I want to use the spreadsheet to review it for you. So let's get into that. Okay, characters. We meet 2 characters in this. I think that there's one other character that's going to be a big part of this book, but in this first chapter we do meet 2 characters. There's a lot of banter. I kind of understand them. I felt like they were very nuanced, and I even enjoyed the minor precision of like people in line at the coffee store. I felt like even those characters had some feelings. I think the characters are getting a 9.5 from me. I really enjoyed the characters in this one. The plot was set up quite well in this. The plot is essentially our protagonist is a fallen angel and now kind of makes humans sin, and they have a new person to make sin, if that makes sense. I think I'm intrigued. I think the plot was really well set up. I think it's getting an 8. The writing. I think the writing is getting a 9. I actually think it could have gotten higher, but for me, this book has footnotes, and I think this book is actually very well technically written. I saw very little issues. The dialogue was not clunky at all. Phrases were done really well. My biggest issue are those footnotes, and I always wished that like footnotes weren't footnotes. Because I end up reading the footnotes at the end of the page. My brain always misses those 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s in that little corner. I wish that they made those more prominent, so I think I might have an issue with writing just because I'm gonna lose some of the elements from here because I won't read them when you're supposed to read them. I honestly just wish that that had been put right into the story. I think the way this is written, having what was in the footnotes as part of the story would not have affected the story at all, because it sounds like it's coming from someone's outside already. I don't know if that made sense. That was kind of confusing. So I think it would have gotten a 10 for writing, but that the footnotes kind of left me hanging. For setting, we do get a setting in the coffee shop. We got a decent amount of world building in this. I think it is also getting a 9 for me. And enjoyment-wise, I really liked that. That's getting a 9, which puts it at an 8.90, which is pretty much the closest it can get for a 5-star without a 5-star, so it is a 4-star prediction, which is pretty solid. Pretty solid. It's essentially like a 4.5. I'm really excited for this one. I really, really am now. The little like coffee shop setup was really good. The world between the angels and the good angels and the bad angels and the sin counter and the little bit of humor in this. I really enjoyed this first chapter. I'm pleasantly surprised and very excited for it. Okay. I was obsessed with this first chapter. This was so good. Like, the intrigue I have for this world and what has just been set up is insane. I don't have words. I think it deserves a book on the head. I really liked that. The way that this story resolves... I feel like I haven't explained to you any story in this video. Oops. This first chapter sets up the world of the cruel gods. So we literally watched someone die from a god, and it was so cool to see. We see the godless view. We see what is the first literally the first lines of this. I was hooked. I was hooked from the first line. It says, want to avoid your god's attention? Then never pray. Prayer is a direct line of communication between gods and their mortals. By praying, you're shouting in your god's ear, I'm here! Don't pray, not even in jest. Without prayer, your existence will be another soul lost among thousands. From Anonymous, godless flyer on prayer. And that's literally the first lines. I was sold. I'm sold. And you kind of get to see what happens with someone when they pray and they're not on the god's good side, and the different magical abilities that each god passes down, and you're set up with the different hierarchies of which people are on top and which one is lower. We meet both of our main characters within this chapter. We are in Kale's perspective, but we do meet Quen as well, and I really liked the banter between them. I really, really enjoyed this. I think it set up the plot really well to see the kind of like mystery that's happening, which I do love a type of mystery in my fantasy books, so I think this could just really work well for me. I think it kind of reminds me of City of Stairs. Let's get out the spreadsheet and go over those. Cruel Gods. Characters, honestly a 10. Plot, I think, is a 9.5. I really enjoyed that. Writing, I saw no issues with the writing. It was very technically strong. I'm giving it a 10. Setting, 10. Enjoyment, 10. Okay, maybe the writing should get a 9.5. Maybe that's a little too giving a 10. But based on that first chapter, I really enjoyed that, which is a 9.80, which means it is a 5-star prediction. I also realized I just put this in as Cruel Gods, but it's the 13th Hour. Not Cruel Gods, but same but different. I wish I had been filming my reaction as I read this, because that was so much fun. I just read the first chapter of Scales and Sensibility, and I laughed. I had so much fun reading this. Oh my god. Oh lordy. I was not expecting this. I was not expecting this. That was so good. You know what? I'm not 100% surprised, because my guilty pleasure is like Regency era. Like, I love, and like things that have fun with the Regency era. Like Bridgerton is like my kind of vibe. Like that is my guilty pleasure. I love watching Bridgerton, which has that like, it like doesn't take itself too seriously for the Regency era, and I think this is gonna do the exact same thing. Like, the dragon is so cute, and just like the first line of this, like I knew from the first line of this I was gonna enjoy this first chapter. It was a truth universally acknowledged that any young lady without a dragon was doomed to social failure, but it was becoming increasingly obvious to everyone in Hathergill Hall that for Penelope Hathergill, actually having a dragon would guarantee disaster. I had so much fun. I feel like this did first chapter very well. Not only did I have fun, it set up the plot of this book, which is going to be the social outcast that is our main character, and stealing the dragon, and the struggles she's going to go with living with her cousin and her cousin's family, and what her cousin thinks of her. It set up those character dynamics really well. This was a really, really, really well written first chapter. I mean, Stephanie Burgess is a traditionally published writer for her middle grade series, so I was expecting good writing going into this. I was expecting it to be clean and polished, and she gave me that, even in her even in her self-published work. I am very excited to read this. Let's take it to the spreadsheet. Also characters. I think the characters, they deserve a 10. I really enjoyed I feel like I completely understood the characters. I felt like they were who they were supposed to do. They didn't feel like flat characters. They felt nuanced. Even the talk of like the servants being so disgusted by the dragon was good. The dragon's personality came through. Like, I met 4 different characters in this, including the dragon, and I felt like I understood all 4 of them. I really enjoyed that. The plot, I think I'm gonna have a good time with the plot. I think it also might get a 9. Writing, I do think the writing deserves that 10. I think it was polished, it was well done, it flowed nicely, it was well written. Remember that when I'm doing these predictions based on the first chapter, I think that your stats for like writing and stuff can be higher or lower because you don't get to see the overall. Like they really will change, I think, overall. It's easier to give a 10, I think, for good writing in a first chapter than it is in an overall story. The setting, again, I think that was really well set up. I think that that's getting a 9. I think the setting is getting an 8.5 from me. I think it was really well set up, but if I'm talking about setting, but we didn't get to see the world that much. There was no, we were just in one room, so I think this very much set the characters up better than the world building and the setting. So that is going to be an 8.5. I do think that it will be done really well. We set up that like Regency and I think the dynamics for the world building, but I would like to see more of the outside. My enjoyment, I think, was probably a 9, which puts this book at a 9.30. which makes it a 5-star prediction. Was this just the plot twist of the century? I had so much fun reading this. I guess I need to continue. I am shook. I'm really shook. I don't know how to feel about this one. So I think that for predicting first chapters with a wide variety of chapters and doing it based on statistics, it is a little bit harder for epic fantasy to get those higher ratings, because typically an epic fantasy does a lot more than, let's say, a Dragon Regency romance. Like, it has to set up a lot more than that book does. That doesn't make any book better than the other, like, technically reading-wise or anything like that. It just means that that first chapter can set up a lot more if the book has a simpler concept than a simpler, okay? Than an epic fantasy that is going to be very complicated and have a lot of moving parts to it. I really enjoyed that, and I want to keep reading. I really liked that chapter, but I don't think it was as strong on anything as Regency Dragons. I think that it just has a lot more work to do, but it's my kind of read, so I'm excited for that work, if that makes sense, where I know if it's not your kind of read, you would really struggle with it. I really enjoyed the character POV that we got in this. I enjoyed the ending and of the chapter a lot. I really liked that ending. I felt like it made me want to keep reading, specifically knowing that the second chapter is from that exact same POV. It doesn't swap to a new POV, although I do want to get to a new POV and meet more characters, because I think this is multi-POV'd, because it says the character name at the beginning of the chapter. But is it actually? Yes, it is. Okay. And I think we met a character that might have a POV in this, and I want that POV. I liked the setup of the slave system in this that you saw, which is a big thing that happens in fantasy. I felt like it was done kind of well and unique. I liked the crab hunting. Are these like giant crabs? Like, they have to be giant crabs, which is really cool. I really liked that world building aspect. So let's take it to the spreadsheet. I'm really intrigued to continue this one for sure. And I still think that this will be high up on my list once it's completed, but I don't think it was as strong of a first chapter just because it's trying to set up so much. Okay, character-wise, I really liked our characters in this. They felt nuanced to me. I feel like their characters made sense. I do think it's a bit of a younger perspective. I think he must be like 20-ish, I'm guessing. I felt like the side characters were well fleshed out. I understood the personality of the person in charge. I understood the personality of the other slaves that we met. There's two of them that stand out, one who isn't friendly and the other one who is. I do actually really enjoy the characters. I think the characters deserve a 9. Plot-wise, I don't think we fully set up the entire plot in this first chapter, which in general, in high fantasy, you just can't do that in one chapter, which is why I think that these will struggle so much more at setting up that plot than things like Scales and Sensibility does, or Small Miracles, where the 13th Hour does it really well, but it was a very long chapter and this one was short. I think I'm giving the plot setup an 8, because I think I know where it's going, and I'm excited. The writing I really liked. I think it's getting an 8.5 from me. The only struggle I really saw with it is that some sentences were very, very long and just didn't flow as nicely. They could have been shortened. I didn't need a sentence to span 4 lines, if that makes sense. But other than that, it felt very technically strong to me. The world building and the setting, now, the magic system was not seen in this, but the setup of the indentured slaves and the crab hunting and the girl that's starving, I think I'm going to put this as an 8 as well, just because I would have liked to see some of that magic system. I think a prologue could have probably been good to see that. And my enjoyment-wise, I think it will get a 9. I think I enjoyed it just about as much as I enjoyed Scales and Sensibility, which then puts it at a 8.50, which is a 4-star prediction. Okay, I finished the first chapter of Fire the Forebears. I didn't love this one. I think it has potential, but my concerns with it scare me. I think that there was something jarring about the pace of this. There's a scene at the beginning where we meet the talking bear, and I didn't think that scene felt like it belonged with the rest of the chapter and what happens, which scares me. because I think that will be a pacing issue that could happen throughout the rest of the book. This is the first book I've read where I was actually, like, nervous about reading the rest of the book. I'm still hopeful, but the pacing being off and being disjointed, my reading experience was not the highest with this one. I liked the setup otherwise. Without that scene, I think it could have been a strong chapter if we had dived a little bit more into the personalities of our main characters as well. I think it felt a little bit more surface level. I would have liked a little bit more thought to the, what are they called? The talking animals. There's a name for them, and they compare them to humans because they have the intelligence of a human, and I liked that discussion. I wish we had gotten more of it. I think that we just scratched the surface level of things in this chapter. I also felt like anytime an animal talked, that dialogue wasn't the greatest. I didn't mind the dialogue between the humans, but I think that if you're writing animal characters and you're going to tell me that they're almost as intelligent as humans, you may as well give me the same dialogue. They don't need to talk like they're not as big-brained. So let's take this to the spreadsheet, but I am a little bit nervous for this one. The characters were done okay. I think that they deserve a 7. The plot, I don't feel like any plot was set up really besides, I don't really feel like any plot was set up. I think I'm gonna give it a 6 for plot. I'm not sure where this book is going at all from what I got in this chapter. The writing, I think, is also getting a 6 from me, and the setting, I think, will get a 6.5, and my enjoyment is probably a 6 on this. I just didn't have the best time with this. I think that the disjointedness of the scene with the bear and then the scene with the village just really didn't work well for me, and that really affected my enjoyment. Enjoyment can be such a small thing. It also is what I think with the writing I didn't love as much. As I said, I think that we just scratched the surface, and I hope that the writing improves and gives me a little bit more development. I am judging it based off one chapter, right? Like, this is just one chapter. I'm always hoping that things will go a little bit better. That ends up with a 6.30, which is a 3-star prediction. This is the same mark that Tethered Spirits got, but I am just slightly more excited for Tethered Spirits than this one. And I couldn't tell you why, it's just my gut feeling. 3 more to read. And then I gotta go cook dinner. I actually need my Kindle for the next one, so I'm gonna go grab that. Okay, I read the first chapter of the Mysterious Ways, or Mysterious Ways, there's no the. I'm lost in this one. I feel like this chapter just, like, went over my head. I think it's maybe because my enjoyment was not the highest. It's not a story I typically love, which I knew going into this one. This is my scariest one, I think, now. I don't remember what my predictions were when I first did them based on vibes, but this one, the more I've learned about this one, the less I've thought I'd love it. It's going to be a fantasy romance. I think it'll be mainly around those 2 characters. These are things I don't love as much. And there were demons in this, but I do like demons. But there was a lot going on, and I felt like nothing was completely well explained. Let's take it to the spreadsheet, because I think I need to sort my thoughts out a little bit on this one. When I'm trying to sort my thoughts through these things, I often will go look at the rubric and read out loud what I need, like I did the first time. So do their motives make sense for them? Do they act their age? This one's so hard, as I said, with the first chapter. Do you feel for them? Are they compelling to read about? I didn't really feel for the characters. Are they distinguishable from each other and have their own voices? Again, I just couldn't really tell that. Oh, now people are vacuuming. I hope you can't hear the vacuum, but you'll probably hear my cat. I just didn't really feel for the characters in this. Are they nuanced versus flat characters? They felt like typical tropes to me. And how are the side characters? Could you describe the characters to a friend? It's hard to tell in a first chapter, but I don't know. I think the characters are a 6. Plot-wise, we did set up the plot. I don't necessarily enjoy it, but I think the plot is a 7. Writing, I think the writing was a 7. Setting, we did get a little bit of the setting and the world building. We did set up like demons and the gods and the siblings. I think that this could be a 7.5 there for me. Enjoyment wise, I think it was a 5. I really did not enjoy reading that. I just kind of felt like it was bland. But I think this is personal preference. This is when it really comes into like, I didn't enjoy the story. But I hope that changes. I am still hopeful that maybe I'll just be invested in the characters. I have nothing to say. This was a really fast update, which puts it at a 6. Oh, that puts it at a 6.50, which is higher than Fire the Forebears, which doesn't feel like it should be based on my own enjoyment, but the technical skills, I guess, were just there in the writing. There was like technical skills. It was well written. I guess it was kind of surface level. I need to go read the rubric for writing. How is the prose? Does it work for you? The prose was good. Are there editing issues? I didn't find any issues. How are the themes and content? Does it make sense for the genres as subgenres in it? Yes. Is there consistent word choices and imagery? Is it clear, precise? Yes. How is the dialogue? It was well done. Good ratio of dialogue to narration? Yes. Did the author leave things unexplained? Were things clear? Honestly, yeah, I think I can stand by. I think the writing had, a 7, which is a lot of great things, but still see issues. 75% good, 25% bad. I think it deserves that 7. So yeah, that's at a 6.50. 2 more. I'm gonna get right on them. I finished the first chapter of Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. This was not what I expected, and I think in a good way. I actually enjoyed this. It is very stream of consciousness, which reminds me of Mary, which is a horror book that I just read. But the main character also reminds me of from the Winnowing Flame trilogy, what's her face? The older lady, Vintage, in the Winnowing Flame trilogy, as well as our protagonist in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series. And I appreciate an older woman POV. We don't get those a lot in fantasy, and obviously I understand why, and I love a young kid POV, but I do think it's something interesting to get, and it could be done really, really well. I enjoyed the setup with this. It is very similar in terms of setup to Regency Dragons, but older. Like, I feel like this could be if those characters had aged up, almost. And I think that's really interesting to see both of these pass on into the SPFBO and see how these trends happen in fantasy. We haven't met dragons yet at all. We've mostly just set up the dynamics with the characters, which I truly enjoyed. I liked what was happening here. I liked our main character. I enjoyed being in our main character's head. I felt her very relatable. Her ideas on marriage and things like that, and the life that she lives currently. I did really like that. So let's take it to the spreadsheet. Okay, with Miss Percy's, I think the characters were very strong. I think that the characters I will be giving a 10. I think that they're really well written. They're really well done. I enjoyed it. The plot we haven't really seen much of, but I do think it's going to be a stream of consciousness type novel, which is a very different plot than a high epic fantasy, but I do think I can only give this maybe an 8.5 for plot, just because we did set up a little bit. We saw a little bit set up, but not like in entirety, if that makes sense. Writing, I think the writing is really well done. I'd probably give it a 9. The setting, I really enjoyed the setting. Again, I do kind of wish we had seen more of those dragons, but not as well set up. I do think maybe an 8.5 there, and enjoyment wise I really enjoyed that. I think I'm gonna give that a 9.5, which gives us a 9.10, which is a 5-star prediction. Very interesting. I'm very, very interested. Now the only one I have to read left is A Touch of Light, which I have already read and given 5 stars, but when I read it I'm going to try to only base these predictions on the first chapter and forget what I already know about the rest of the series. I didn't think it would be that hard to separate my thoughts this time around from having already read it, but as I read this I just get so excited for what's to come in this book, because I know these things and I'm like, oh, that hints at that, that hints at that. So this rating could be very hard. I don't really want to tell you a lot because I think it will spoil lots of things. I do think the first chapter of this is not the strongest. Again, I think it's high fantasy and it's so hard to set up what happens in the entire book within one chapter. It is a prologue, so be warned, it does skip time after. It is a prologue, which I've never met a prologue that doesn't alter time in some way. Normally a prologue, I think, is done in the past or sometimes in the future. So there is that forewarning going into it. And I just find Thiago's writing very well done. His prose is beautiful. It's very technically strong. I think the character work in this first chapter is done quite well. We set up the hierarchy. We set up a lot of important characters. I mean, it's so hard because I know more. So a lot of important characters are seen within this first chapter or talked about or referred to. It does set up characters really well. It does set up future plot really well. But I know that already. And I can say the first time I read this first chapter, I didn't feel those things. So it is very hard. I felt like I did feel those things, but not to the same extent that I see them now. I think that this will be a reread that I really enjoy because I think I'll pick up on a lot of things. But I'm going to go over to the spreadsheet to talk to you about this because I don't have a lot to say besides that I truly just adored this first chapter. Still. I still loved it. I still am excited. I do think I wish that the magic had been more set up, but I have insider information that chapter 3 does that really well. Chapter 3 or 4. So it's coming soon, but it is not set up in that first chapter. And it's unfair of me to say, oh, it's coming, because none of the other books got that. So I won't be saying that. I do wish it did set up the magic a little bit more within this, but I think this one focuses more on the political issues than the world building magic. It sets up the political world instead. Let's take this to the spreadsheet. Okay, characters. I'm going to look at the rubric for this one because I think it will help me. Do their motives make sense for them? Do they act their age? Do you feel for them? Are they compelling to read about? I think that they were compelling. I was compelled to learn about the political intrigue that's happening here. Are they distinguishable from each other? Have their own voices? Can't really say that right now. Do you understand them? I do think I understand our main character's perspective and his goals. Are they nuanced characters versus flat? The emotion could have been a little bit more there. I don't think that they're flat. I definitely don't think that they're flat, but I think that Adrian could be a little more well-rounded in this first chapter. How are the side characters, not just protagonists? Could you describe the characters to a friend? I can't answer the last one because I know the characters too much, but how are the side characters? I do think we get a good perspective of what the king is like and what his wife is like within this first chapter, as well as I think we got insight on his dead brother. So I think for characters, I'm gonna put it at 8. Great, a lot of great things, because, what is 8.5? 9 is excellent. I think I'm gonna give it an 8.5 for characters. I do think that Adrian could have been a little bit more, but there are plot setup. I do think I know too much. This is the problem. This is really hard to do. It doesn't make sense. Are there plot holes, plot conveniences? How is the pacing done well or uneven? How is the foreshadowing? There hidden Easter eggs throughout the story. Was it satisfying for the story itself? Was it unique? Is there plot twist done well? Is it plot too predictable? Is it engaging? I literally can't answer any of those because I know too much. So I'm just going to go with based on gut reaction if I think that it encompassed the plot well enough. I think it set up the plot in terms of the military plot and the alliances that we're trying to set up. But I don't think that I really know where the story is going when reading this prologue. So I want to say maybe a 7. I might be harsher on this one because I've already read it. This is a problem. Writing. How is the prose? Does it work for you? Are there editing issues? How are the themes and content? Does it make sense for the genre subgenre it's in? Is there consistent word choices and imagery? Is it clear, precise? How is the dialogue well executed and natural, or is it a little clunky, not as fluent? Is there a good ratio of dialogue to narration? Did the author leave things unexplained? Were things clear? Was there a lot of unneeded information? I think his writing deserves a 10, especially in this prologue. I think it was well done. It definitely deserves that 10. The setting. Does the atmosphere work? I think that I got tension from the politics in this perspective. Do you feel immersed into the story? Is it vivid? Can you picture the setting? We do see the griffins in this chapter, which I actually missed the first time around that we see them. It's very, very small. Is there if there are rules, do they work or do they contradict themselves? Were the rules broken at any point? Can't really answer that. Do timelines make sense? Can't really answer that. It's unique, interesting, too similar to other things. World building, as I said, I wish we had gotten more magic in this. We do get that glimpse, but only because I know too much. I think it's getting an 8. I feel like it was on par with what Umbral Storm gave me. So I think it can get an 8. And my enjoyment-wise, I'm giving it a 9. I want to give it a 10 upon reread, but I know I struggled a little bit with that prologue the first time, so it is just getting a 9, which puts us at an 8.50, which is a 4-star prediction. So I think that right there shows you how basing predictions on the first chapter is not always perfect, and how my thoughts and feelings can change so much. I think specifically when basing them on more objective stats, it's very hard because you can only get so much in a first chapter, and most first chapters either lean heavily into the characters and getting those characters heavily attached, getting you attached heavily to those characters or to that plot and world building. It's hard to do both within 10 pages. Like, first chapters aren't normally very strong. So I do think seeing that 4-star shows you how it might change. Also, I could be being harsher on this one because it's hard to separate my reread from the things now. Yeah, so that is a ranking. Should we see what they look like in order now? Should we look at that? Okay, when I was going just based on vibes, like book covers, book synopsis, this is what my ranking looked like. This is so hard to hold up. Okay, so I'm just gonna hold it right here for you. So we had Small Miracles, A Song for the Void, The Mysterious Ways, Miss Percy's Pocket Guide, Scales and Sensibility, The 13th Hour, Fires of the Forebears, Tethered Spirits, The Umbral Storm, and A Touch of Light. This is what it looked like. 2 rankings based on first chapters. At the bottom we have Fire of the Forebears. And then we have Tethered Spirits. These made a jump. And then we have my Mysterious Ways fill-in, which is at the same position, interestingly enough. And then we have A Song for the Void. And then the Umbral Storm and A Touch of Light are technically tied, but because I know a little bit more, I'm putting A Touch of Light on top. I think I might have been harsher with that, trying to, like, mitigate the feelings I already had for it. And then we have Small Miracles. Then we have Miss Percy. Then we have Scales and Sensibility. And then we have The 13th Hour. So it looks like... like failure, apparently. First chapter predictions are weird, is what I learned from here. And I don't know how I feel about this at all. I'm nervous. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below what your predictions are, or if any of these shocked you, or if you're more excited for any of these. And if you're not feeling chatty, you can just leave me a star emoji. And then if you'd like to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon are all linked in the description bar below. Same with anything you need to know about SPFBO Cassidy's version is linked on the website that is in my description bar. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.